Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Wow, am I excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here is a quote just for this episode. What lies behind you and what lies in front of you pales in comparison to what lies inside of you. Ralph Waldo Emerson, our guest today, is someone with a good vibe. Co-founder of the Good Vibe Squad, McBilly Sy, who I've actually had the pleasure of introducing years ago at the 2020 Vision Summit. McBilly Sy and his partner Preston Smidley are great friends and those that have influenced over 1,000 service-based businesses to grow exponentially. Just past 10 million in an award for 10 million plus in revenues, and we'll unpack what that is. Very few humans have done that in and around the ClickFunnels community. If you're familiar with that, we'll unpack that. But McBilly has a very educated background, has been able to take that into the space of marketing and business services and success for the clients that are smart enough to hire the Good Vibe Squad. So thanks for coming on, man. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better and introduce you to our audience.
Dude, happy to be here, man. And man, yeah, what an intro there. Happy to be here, dude. I know I was just telling you this earlier, how I find it very inspiring, and seeing what you've done in like not only just talking about it, but like actually doing it, making this like recording 250 episodes in like a year. Dude, that is a feat. So I'm happy to be here, man.
Thanks so much. Yeah, my insecurities arising. That was done in 6 months because I don't know what I was doing for the first 6 months of 2023. Just to be clear on that, and it actually leads to a question: how have you been able to navigate navigate all the responsibility of building this business? You have dozens and dozens of employees, people that look to you, while simultaneously having the responsibilities to grow it, right? Because you're reacting to the responsibility of the business and having to grow it. So as an entrepreneur yourself and a co-founder, how have you navigated that tension with serving the needs before us and growing the future needs? Like I struggle with it myself.
Yeah, I mean, as entrepreneurs and as business owners, that's obviously a huge factor. There's always this feeling of like, oh man, like, I can do more, I want to do more, but there's not enough time, right? And that's like always one of the things. A huge part of it is like, it's systemizations and people, right? Really, those are the two things. Systemizations and people. And I would say I actually struggle with this a lot. Have struggled with it for quite a bit, in the sense that, with like my Colby, I don't know if you're familiar with this, with like Colby.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking
can
about?
you
Like,
explain it to the audience? It's a personality test, right?
yeah, it's actually a unique personality test. That's the easiest way to think about this, especially for your audience. For example, if you're not aware of this, it's called Colby, and it's a personality test. But most of the other personality tests there, like DISC and all those assessments, they are looking at specifically your kind of traits on what you find what is passionate for you, for example. But for Colby, which is very interesting, it's different because it is the only quote unquote personality test that actually tests for cognitive. And there's cognitive, there's also the what your interests are, but there's the cognitive, which is what drives, like, how you take action, is basically what it is. And so one of the thing is, for me, I'm a very perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist person. I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we're like very, very ambitious, high performance, right? And it's always a struggle to delegation is one thing that's like a big, like, hey, why would I delegate this if I could do it better, right? And so one of the quotes that I really love from Buy Back My Time, highly recommend this book. He talks about like 80% done by another person is 100% awesome, right? And so that's one of the thing is really just really looking at and actually I had to go through, so both Preston and I went through this phase where we had to like go through a whole day and basically documented what were we doing during that day, like literally. And there's a tool, I'm forgetting the tool in my head, but there's like, it's basically like a time tracking. And so you basically just document yourself. If you just do this for like a whole week, you will actually see, like, I wake up and then I document, what do I do, what's the next thing I do, what's the next thing I do. And then you'll be amazed actually at everything that your time actually goes to. And what you want to do is you want to put a value, a dollar amount value to what that is, right? And the truth of the matter is, we actually do a lot of, even if we think about how, my hourly rate is like 1,000 per hour, right? And I
Yeah.
legit, like, we actually do consulting, and I charge that value, but you're probably going to be amazed that you probably do a lot of $10 per hour, task, right? And so that's one of the things. It's like, well, I have to be just honest with myself. If I truly value my own time, and where I thrive is actually on the strategic, building, the systems and workflows and on like the back end stuff. And so, and being the face of it too, right? Attracting your ideal customers, doing content just like what you're doing with your podcast, Jay. It's like you'll actually see that, like, oh my God, I'm putting so much time in things that I could just delegate and do more, right? Because at the end of the day, you talk about how can we do more? Well, a huge part of this is just looking at leverage, right? One of the things that I learned, this is a good friend of ours, Mark Joyner. Shout out to him.
Mark.
Do you know who Mark Joyner is?
No, I'd love to.
Dude, so Mark Joyner, especially for everyone here, I would Google him, follow him in social media. He is the inventor of the tracking pixel. Okay, so
Wow.
we met Mark Joyner in Thailand, where he spoke. He was a keynote speaker there. We've actually built some really good friendships with him. He also attended my wedding in the
Wow.
Philippines.
Congratulations too.
Thank you, thank
I
you.
know you
It's
get married.
recent, early this year.
Wow.
And so, dude, he is so smart. And one of the things that I really learned from him is, oh, and by the way, just for your audience too, he's also the inventor of the ebook.
Really?
Yeah, he invented the first ebook. So he invented the tracking pixel. This is even before Facebook and Google, created like their pixel, right? And so he talks about this Jaime principle, okay? And so if you think about it, it's HIME, and basically it's this grid and matrix that is high impact, minimum effort, right? And so to me, I actually pass through a lot of the things that I do in our company through this lens, which is, okay, it's all about creating leverage, right? And so what is the input? And leverage, a lot of people kind of complicate this. It's leverage. The formula is just, hey, what is the amount of input versus the amount of output, right? And so you just want to simplify this to be, hey, how can I create a process where I could have the same amount of inputs, but have more output, right? And that's done through systemization, that's done through people. Actually, have you heard about the concept of the 4 types of leverage?
No. Okay, what are they?
Dude, so another book recommendation, Naval Ravikant. So highly recommend this. So Naval Ravikant, for your audience, he's basically the co-founder of AngelList, and he actually did not write a book, but because of his wealth of knowledge, somebody compiled his teachings and created a book. It's called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Highly recommend it. And to give you guys context on who this person is, why is he even relevant? Why should you listen to him, and why I listen to him? Is he is first of all, he's a billionaire, but not all billionaires are, that's one aspect to follow him, right? But the cool thing that I genuinely really love about him is not only is he successful financially, quote unquote, being a billionaire, but because he's also fulfilled. Okay. Like he has an amazing family life. You know, if you look at a lot of billionaires out there that are like successful financially, but you look at their personal life, it's terrible, right? And I don't want that, right? I want to be financially free. We're building business to impact people, but I also want to have an amazing personal life. You know, I just got married. You know, we're planning for kids right now. We're actually trying for kids right now, and I want to have a healthy relationship, healthy family life. And for him, he has both, right? And so what he talks about is he has created this grid, which is basically the 4 types of leverage. Okay, so if you think about this, it's like this pyramid. So at the bottom layer, it is basically labor, right? So this is the most basic type of leverage, which if you think about it, well, that's what we just talked about is people, right? So you basically hire employees. It is the most basic level of leverage because any businesses, if you look at it, well, we start with this, right? You hire employees. And so now if you're able, that same amount of input that if I'm going to, for example, cold call someone or call someone, well, if I hire 10 people, well, now with that same amount of input, I'm going to have 10 times the amount of output, right? So that's just the basic level. Now, on top of this, okay, the second level is capital, okay? So when you have capital, if you think about it, this is basically using capital, using other people's money, you could create leverage. So a good example for this is, Berkshire Hathaway, right? Literally this is how Uncle Warren has built his like billions of net worth, is basically leveraging other people's capital, right? And so now the thing with these 2 levels, if you think about it, is the reason why they're at the bottom is you actually need other people's permission, right? If you think about it. So, if I'm hiring someone to do somebody else, so to be an employee, well, I'm going to need their permission, right? If I'm going to use other people's capital, well, I also need their permission, right? Now, on the 3rd and 4th level, the higher level for leverage is basically code, right? If you write script, if you're creating code, especially with AI right now, how powerful it is, if you're writing, automations for our company, we have a ton of automations. We've actually built our own softwares as well. And, so with that, the cool thing about this and why it's amazing leverage is you write the code, one time, you set it up one time, it's working for you 24/7, right? While you're sleeping, whatever. And the cool thing about it is you don't need people's permission, right? Because it's just there. It's computer, it's an AI, right? Now, the other form, the 4th level of leverage is media, right? Now, when you create media, for example, this podcast that we're shooting right now, you only work on it once, you create a video, and now it's working for you 24/7, right? I've created videos, from years and years ago that are still working today, right? And so this is how you're able to create just massive amount of leverage. And so now here's the cool thing about this. If you think about the, all businesses, usually most businesses, they're going to have that first level, right? Labor. And then if you look back at the past 5 decades, right? The companies that have, amassed wealth has used that second level, which is the capital, right? So investment firms, right? Again, Berkshire Hathaway is a really good example for this. But when you look at the past decade, right, more recency, all the big, even if you look at the top 10, right, like top 10, most successful companies today, they all use all 4 of them, right? So they have labor, they have, they have the capital, they have media. So Amazon, Facebook, Google, they also have code, right? So, literally Amazon, they own IMDb, they have Amazon Prime, right? Same with Facebook. They built like this massive, media. Google has YouTube, right? And so when you have all 4 of these, now you have massive amount of leverage. And this is really, to answer and go back to your original question, Jay, this is how we approach things for our company and how we're able to do more with little, right? So, dude, highly, highly recommend, looking and passing through those lenses. And that's how I look at things, and why to me, I'm very, it's like creating media for us is so vital. And this is one of the things that we really help our clients with, is combining both the direct response of paid marketing and organic marketing, right? Because this is the cool thing that we've actually seen when we help and partner with, with our clients. It's like a lot of people kind of just like, if you think about it, Jay, like when people think about an ad, for example, they think like, oh man, like I just want to put an ad out there and, have a powerful call to action. They click on it, and then, you could bring them into a sales funnel, and then you walk them through and sell them through either a video or a video sales letter or maybe a webinar. And then after that, cool, you have a call to action, and then boom, they purchase, right? Like that's, or what most marketers would sell you, that, hey, this is the process. But the truth is, that's not what people do nowadays, right? Because nowadays, it's actually interesting. Google also put out a research on this. They conducted a research, especially today, because of how smart consumer behaviors are. There's actually research that 70% of people make a buying decision, not just any decision, a buying decision before they speak with a service business for the first time, right? They make their buying decision online, right? So 70% of people, they make a buying decision online before they even speak with the business. So what does that mean? Your prospects, your potential customers, they are Googling you, they are researching you, they are literally reading your reviews, they're making a conscious buying decision even before speaking with you, because they know the power that they have, which is they have Google, right? They have social media, they're going to check you in Instagram, they're going to check you in TikTok, they're going to check you in YouTube, right? And so what we found, it's interesting for us, is we would run ads, and this applies to our clients. When you see an ad, what's the first thing that you think of? Well, you're going to have doubts, right? You're going to be like, they're okay. I hear you on it, but right, there's a but. And so now, when you capture somebody through, for example, like an ad, what people do is like, they're not going to make a decision right away. Well, they're going to Google you, right? And so what we've seen, and we actually conducted research with our clients, bro, that on average, our clients, they would actually watch more than 10 videos before they would sign up with us, right? And so what does that mean? What this means is people want to make a conscious decision because they're doing their due diligence. And so to you as a business owner, now, especially now, it is so much more important to actually have, one, a social media presence, two, to be intentional about it. We actually, so for us, we help our clients create what's called an invisible funnel. So the idea behind this is like it's normal to have like a marketing funnel, a sales funnel, like ClickFunnels, right? The problem with that, now it's still very effective, mind you. We use that all the time. It's very effective. But with the change in consumer behavior now, I don't want to be sold. People don't want to be sold, right? If you send me to a link, an opt-in page, and something like that, I know that you're trying to sell me, right? But with a social media profile, though, right, like which is public, if I build, so basically what we do is we convert your social media profile into a sales funnel without your prospects and leads knowing that they're inside a sales funnel, which is basically why we call it like an invisible funnel, right? And so what it is if I Google you, how intentional are you with what people see? And have you actually constructed a specific set of stages, right, that people have to go through so that if they consume this piece of content, well, they know who you are, they know what you do, they know that how you could help them, and they know that you are a credible person, right? And so position you as the authority and ultimately becoming a trusted voice, so that at that point, and you know, this is what, like, we've actually seen this for us, is when we have people hopping on our quote unquote sales calls, which to us, that's not really a sales call, right? It's really more of a, it's a strategy session, right? But for most of us, it's like when they're at that point, well, dude, if they've watched over 10 videos from you already, and you've actually already, you know, answered a lot of their questions, and this is for us, what we do is like, you create the videos so that you're overcoming objections before they even come in, right? And so when you create it that way, when they're hopping on that call, they're like, well, man, I mean, I'm pretty much sold. I have a couple more questions. I want to clarify this. How will this work for, you know, my business XYZ? But now it's just a clarification, right? There's built-in trust. You know, I know that you guys know what you're talking about. I know how the process works a little bit. You know, maybe there's a clarification, but they're pretty much pre-sold, right? This is how you attract pre-sold customers, by using both paid advertising and organic marketing, because you want to attract them using paid, but then you want to build and deepen the relationship and pre-sell them using organic marketing, right? And this is how we built our marketing funnel for us.
What are some of the questions to discern the value of, let's say, one that's going to opt in, that you'd want to know answers to in that process, right? So you're having that strategy call.
Mhm.
What are some of the things you're looking for to figure out, discern between, the most valuable people, even, right? The people behind the businesses, or the businesses. Sure.
So, I mean, you really want to define that by, we filter it through, it kind of depends on the stages, right? I want to kind of unpack your question. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're asking for, Jay, is, hey, if I'm creating a funnel, right?
Yeah.
What are the things that I'm doing to almost like pre-qualify them? Is that your question?
So we're on the strategy call. They most of the work has been done, if I'm hearing you correctly,
Mhm.
because of the combination of organic and paid,
Mhm.
where now they may have a handful of questions. What questions are you looking to get answers to figure out if they're even a good fit?
Oh, well, that would really depend, right? So, of course, it depends on your offer. It depends on, you know, what you're actually doing,
Okay, so yeah, can you unpack that a
right?
bit? Because
Yeah. So how I think about things is, you know, depending on your business too, you know, I want to make sure that this applies to your audience. Um, because we work with service-based professionals specifically, this is how I look at things. Okay. You know, and you know, I just want to clarify too, because like I think it's different if you're like working with, like, for example, like products, right? Like e-com businesses, etc. But for specifically for service-based professionals, we, from an offer standpoint and a service standpoint, you kind of want to build a value ladder, right? So I want to kind of, let me kind of explain that. You know, your audience might be already aware of this. Really, what a value ladder is you want to segment your customers, because they're going to be very different types of people, right? So for example, this is the concept of the first class in an airplane. They did a study, and what they did was, for the same exact service or product or whatever it is they're selling, you know, there's going to be 10% of people that are always going to want the best, right? It doesn't matter to me, you know, what it is, I'm going to pay for the best, right? Now, there's also going to be people that are going to be in the mid tier. And then there's also people at the very bottom who are like, hey, man, like, I'm trying to save. Even if they could afford, they're just like, hey, I just want to do it. I want to do this myself. I want to be as thrifty and as efficient as possible. And that's okay, right? And so when you think about this from an offering standpoint, we want to break it down to three kind of phases here, which is either you could do a DIY solution, right? So for example, and that's where most courses are. So, okay, do it yourself. Here's the thing. Here's how you could do it. Let me actually teach you how to do it, right? There's also the mid package, which is do it, done with you, right? So there's the DIY, there's the done with you where, hey, let me actually, here's the thing, here's the course, here's the materials. Let me actually work with you to let's do this together, right? And then the highest package, which is the done for you package, right? So, okay, I get it. You're a business owner. You're busy. Let us do it for you, right? And so now you create these three packages. And to go back to your original question, Jay, it's really more of like understanding where they are. And I mean, at the end of the day, you truly want to understand like how you could best serve them, right? Your prospects, which is like, hey, depending on where they are, there's essentially two resources that really we spend, right? So it's either you spend, and you're going to spend it regardless, but it's either you're spending it with money or you're spending it with time or both, right? And so, for example, if you're in the beginning stages in your business, or depending on who you serve, which is why it's really important to clarify your ideal customers, well, you want to kind of make sure first that if they're in the beginning stages, well, they're probably going to have more time than money, right? And so if they're going to have more time than money, then you offer the DIY solution. All right, cool. Do it yourself. Here's how to do it, right? And then if they're now on the flip side of this, as a business owner, even for me, when I buy packages now, depending on what it is, I mean, it doesn't make sense for me to do it. Now, I could actually buy a course, a DIY solution, and have our team members go through it, which I have done. But like for me, like, hey man, I don't really care. I just want the desired outcome, right? If I want the desired outcome, I'd rather you as the expert just do it for me. What's the price? What's the deliverable, right? I just want to, make sure that I understand that. And as long as I could have a good sense of like, if I can understand, and this is really why it's so important to really define, the current situation of your ideal customer to their desired outcome, right? So what is that, desired dream for them, the dream outcome for them? And when you reverse engineer that, well, it would actually make sense for me to just pay you to do it for me versus me, kind of figuring this out through like a course, right? So that's how we would figure out, hey, what would best serve, like best fit, like your specific situation, right?
Money, more time than money. Do it yourself. No, more money than time.
Done for you.
Done for you.
Yeah.
Is money and time done with you?
Yes, exactly. Right. So a little bit of both, right? A little bit of both. It's done with you.
In the growth of your organization, what are some of the traits of the most successful entrepreneurs in the done for you camp?
So most
I think that could be helpful for the audience that are trying to be successful entrepreneurs or
yeah.
successful business owners.
So what I would say is, especially in the done for you side, I would say it's like being open to coachability, right? Because and I think everyone goes through this, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, like there's always ego, right? Like, hey man, like I've done this, like, oh, you don't need to
I
tell
think I
me.
would have quit by now if I didn't have it.
Right, exactly, right. And so, I mean, dude, we work with, top producers, right? And some people, it's actually, so let me actually unpack this to answer your question. It's interesting because we have spoken and we've legit like onboarded, and I mean, at this point, we've actually onboarded over 1,000 people. And so when we look at the pattern, when they come in and their energy is like, hey man, I'm a top producer, I've been doing this for 30 years, how can you help me, right? Versus somebody that is, hey man, I've actually grown quite a bit now, and looking for other options on how to grow, and heard you guys know what you're doing. I'm here to, you tell me what I need to do and I'll do it, right? And so those are very two different perspectives. And it's interesting for even for the people that have been like, hey man, I've been doing this for 30 years. And well, if you've been doing this for 30 years, well, why haven't you been successful, right? There's a reason why you haven't been successful, and why are we even having this conversation to begin with, right? And the thing is, maybe you've been doing this for 30 years, but dude, strategies, tactics, they change. And actually, especially now, the amount of how things change so quickly, the strategies that work, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years, even like 2 years ago, they probably don't even work anymore. There's going to be some things that still work, but with how technology like hastens and speeds up, so many different things. So those two perspectives, I would say, has been really very different, right? Now, for your audience, for example, I mean, I would really say that to look and like make an honest look and assessment with your resources, right? Because, for example, for me, if I had to teach myself, if I had to speak to the McBilly 10 years ago, I had a lot of like limiting beliefs, right? I had a lot of limiting beliefs, and one of it actually, I would say, is spending money. Okay? I am, I grew up, in a very traditional Asian household where, very frugal, right? Dude, when I go to the grocery, I would legit buy the generic brand and not buy, Kraft or, I mean, Tide. I mean, dude, these are like regular brands. But to me, I'm like, no, I'm trying to save like $1 here, $1 there. Because, well, this is just how I was raised, right? And I think it's also a really good trait, a good character trait, because to me, I respect money, right? Like I wasn't born with like a silver spoon or whatever. But so, I respect money, but it is actually a limiting belief, because there were so many times that I could have actually sped up my growth, but because of the limiting belief of like, I'm trying to save. So there's a big difference between being smart with money versus being cheap, right? And so being cheap can actually be expensive, right? And so what do I mean by this? I've actually hired vendors and service providers because I was trying to be cheap. I hired like the cheaper one, or maybe opted on with like a cheaper service or whatever. But now, because of what I did, it actually set me back, right? Now, to be clear though, I am not saying that just choose the more expensive service provider or a vendor or a product, right? I've used amazing products that are cheap as well. I'm just saying it's a mindset thing, right? Because to me, especially for example, like running ads, doing advertising, when people say, I truly believe that, advertising and learning how to acquire customers by exchanging dollars to actual leads, for example, is such an undervalued skill set, because you are not a business if you are just kind of waiting for referrals, right? And so that's one of the most valuable skill set, because to me, well, shit, man, if I could spend $1 and get $1.10 back, I would spend that all day, right? And I think the one of the myths that I would say, now this can be true, but I think one of the problems for most people is being able to discern being able to differentiate the ROI. Okay, so let me actually unpack this a little bit, Jay, because I mean, working with so many people at this point, especially on the advertising and investment and like customer acquisition side, there's a big difference between relative ROI versus absolute ROI. Okay, so what do I mean by this? So most people, they focus on this like relative ROI, like, oh, what's the ROI, right? Like if you know, can I get, you know, 1,000% ROI? Can I get, you know, 200% ROI, right? Now that's cool, right? You obviously want to do that, and we have actually done that. But it's relative, right? If I got, let's just say, just for, you know, ease of numbers, even if I get just like, you know, 200% ROI, so twice, right? 2 times.
Yeah.
But I only spend like, you know, $100. Well, now I made back, you know, 200. So I made the absolute, so the relative ROI is 200%, but the absolute ROI was only $100, right? Versus, let's just say my relative ROI is only, you know, 110%, right? But I actually spent, and this might be, it's probably better to use like, let's say 10x on the relative, right? So if I 10x on $100, my relative, my absolute ROI is $900, right? But if I only 2x on, you know, 10,000, well, that's a total of 20,000. My absolute ROI is now 10,000, right?
Mm.
And so, well, what's bigger, right? Like this one is only 2x, but I made $10,000 more versus this relative one where it's like, oh man, I got 10x ROI, but I only made $900, right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I think that's one of the limiting beliefs that I had to break myself, was I had to spend money to make money. Okay. And this was honestly legit one of the hardest things for me, because it's scary. It is scary, you know, it's scary, but when you this is one thing that you just have to kind of go through. And I've been scammed, quote unquote scammed, right? You know, there's definitely, it's definitely a learning experience with working with I would say like people that I don't think that I'm relatively, I always look in good, I look at the good in people, and I'm actually, this is probably one of my downside, is I'm more of a trusting person. And so that's probably
culture.
that's part of culture. Yeah, I mean, it's so important, right? I mean, literally that's the
There's no
whole
culture without trust.
100%, man. And so the thing for me is like, I had to overcome that, because, you know, when you work with somebody and it doesn't work out, for example, and that could potentially tell you, hey, man, like advertising doesn't work because I tried it. Like I tried it before, and shit, you know, I put in like $1,000 and now I'm like 1,000 in a hole, right? And so, but, well, let's unpack that. Maybe you did it, but one, I mean, there's so many factors to this. First of all, if you only spent $1,000, even though that is a big number, in the general scheme of things, that is a very small number, right? Now, I'm not trying to downplay how big that is, especially depending on where you are in your journey, right? But it's like making sure that these instances don't really, quote unquote, scar you in the sense of not wanting to try it again, right? Because if I stop and this is I'm not going to say his name because I'm not that type of person. I don't want to do that. But there's this person that this is like way when I was in the very beginning stages in my entrepreneurial journey. You know, he had a lot of promises. He's actually a big name. A lot of people respect him. He's worked with like a lot of big names. And so that's why I was very confident. And, I was in the very beginning stages in my entrepreneurial journey. I actually put on a $10,000, I bought his like $10,000 course,
Wow.
program. It's not even just a course, it's like a full program. And I put 10,000 in my credit card because I couldn't afford this at that point. And he had the problem with that, in my experience, was that he made a lot of claims that he completely did not. He just straight up lied, honestly. And so it really put a bad taste in my mouth. However, I am grateful that that experience did not hold me back in pursuing other mentors. Okay.
Wow.
Because he was one of my first mentors that definitely left a bad taste in my mouth. And so, I just want to kind of communicate that, because, it would be so easy to just be like, oh man, this is not for me. This sucks, and then that's it. Right. Like, and then I stop. And so, and then the flip side of this, if you think about it, where this person is, and I had a lot of respect for him, where he is now, well, he's a nobody now. He was a big deal before. And so that also shows you how it is so important to actually, honestly, just give a shit, right? Like, actually do what you're supposed to do. Because if you're thinking about it short term, and I'm so grateful that I went through that journey, kind of learned that in the beginning, and so now, I mean,
That's
not,
profound.
dude, it's a big deal,
That's
right?
culture too.
I mean, dude, it's
Because
such
by
an,
the way, that pyramid without that piece creates slaves.
yes,
Like
yes.
too much leverage without character undermines the very leverage it creates, because you get a revolution in the culture. You get a coup.
Yes.
So it's a very interesting. I got a question for you. Would you be willing to come back to the Culture Matters podcast for like a part two? This is like a master class.
Sure,
And
dude. Absolutely.
I have so many more questions.
I did.
Would you
Absolutely,
be
man.
willing to come back?
Sure, sure, sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, because literally the time flew. I'm like, oh my God. I should have set this for 2 hours because there's just so much
I mean,
intense information, dude. You're
dude,
a
you
machine.
tell me, man. Do you wanna
Well,
we
wait. So in closing, I have one last question. Yeah.
okay.
For those that are listening, if we were to go based on the beginning, let me get this straight because I've learned a lot today. Organic, the combination of organic and paid. I'm going to get clear on like that Chinese proverb: uh, good things are seldom cheap, cheap things are seldom good. I'm going to
Hmm.
get clear on what my paid is, what my plan is. I'm going to integrate that with an organic, essentially invisible funnel, like you said, that's
Hmm.
helping people that are searching on their own
Hmm.
make the decision, or feel as though, free will conversation, that the decision is there to be made. That the integration of the two is going to increase the likelihood of me succeeding in a marketing sense. And Good Vibe Squad's goal is for that outcome to happen. So in closing, um, what would you say is the number one quality of a listener that you would say they're not they're not the ideal fit for you guys as a firm? And the reason I ask that is because our listeners may be very interested in interviewing to be a part of your organization. So what would be something, it's like, you got, whoever's listening, you're not the firm for them.
Uh, I mean, well, I just want to be clear too. Are you saying to, like, I just want to be just to clarify there. I mean, I'm not trying to sell anyone in a program or anything, Jay. Like, to me,
Well, that's
if
the paradox, I think, because you're not. Damn, Skippy, this is a damn good. Um, I mean, I've learned so much. I think people are going to be wanting to work with you through this conversation. That's
yeah,
the paradox. Yes, because
yeah,
you're not
yeah,
trying to do that. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
who's not qualified to work with you guys? You can't work with everyone. And you could
Uh,
also say who is, right? Who you're looking for. But that's
yeah,
like, I want to close this part one. I think it's
sure,
a
sure,
lot of
sure.
value you just dropped. You should have. I want to be. Talk about leverage. I want it to be your call to action.
Yeah,
That's
dude. So,
leverage.
well, yeah, I mean, 100%, right? I mean, well,
So
like, to your
not a
point,
good fit, perfect fit.
I mean, not a good fit is if you're like in the super beginning of your journey, obviously we work with, more established people that actually has the resources and the budget to actually spend on advertising. However, we are actually we have launched a new service that is more just organic, like focus on organic. You can actually see it here. It's called Authority Brand. And so if
Wow.
you are especially, and this applies for both, established business owners that want to really position yourself as the expert, really, it's called Authority Brand. And even if you are in the beginning stages of your journey, this can apply for you as well. Because at the end of the day, like this is what we've seen is that paid advertising combined with the organic is one of the really the flywheels that we have used for our business that have allowed us to grow from like 0 to 10 million, in like more 8 figures there. But essentially, I would just say that the a lot of it is like there's so many strategies and tactics, right, that you could obviously apply. There's different platforms. At the core of it is really being clear with your marketing fundamentals, right?
Mm.
So I'll end your episode. I'll end our episode, Jay, if you're cool with it, with this one last piece, which is being very clear with your 3M, the 3M's in your business. Okay. So the 3M's, and we actually walk through our clients with this, is it's going to be your market, your message, and your media, right? So the easiest way to think about this is your market is your audience, your message is your offer, and then your media is your platform on where you're putting this on, right? Now, if you want to, think about it from an analogy standpoint, think of it as you are a singer, and then your market is your crowd, your message is your song that you're singing, and then the media is your stage, right? Now, let me give you an example. Let's just say we take a really, really commercially successful artist, like for example, Taylor Swift. Now, whether you like Taylor Swift or not, you cannot argue that she is one of the most successful, commercially successful artists. And my wife loves Taylor. Now, if you look at Taylor, who's an amazing singer, you take one of her Billboard, top 10 songs, which is an amazing song, but you put her in front of a heavy metal death band crowd, there's going to be a message market mismatch, which she is absolutely most likely going to bomb, and people are going to boo her off, right? And so this is why it's so important to actually have the right market message match in the right media. And this is where, if you're in that beginning stages and you haven't clarified this yet, there is no amount of paid advertising or organic marketing that you're going to be able to do effectively, at least, if you do not have these three things all lining up. Okay, so I'll leave that to your audience. And yeah, man, I mean, if there are things that you guys, hit me up if you have more questions. It's at McBilly in all of the social platforms. That's also one of the things when you're building your invisible funnel. So just a quick hack there, making sure that your handles, because not a lot of people think about this, is your handles are simple. There shouldn't be any numbers to it or whatever. That way, if you're being interviewed in a podcast just like this one, you could easily just be like, hey, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, X, wherever, it's going to be at McBilly.